Hello and welcome back to Hard on Hardware. I finished my custom loop liquid cooled PC not that long ago, and if you remember in the video I was a little bit disappointed by the temperatures I was getting. I was expecting, of course, like 3 degrees above ambient and like not being able to hear the PC while sitting right next to it and having everything overclocked to like 5 gigahertz plus. Now this was obviously a very reasonable expectation on my part. So when I actually fired everything up and it didn't quite do that, even after all of the huge amount of effort I had put into the system, I was a little bit disappointed. So obviously I had to go to the internet and find out what was wrong. Now, after suffering great disappointment, I decided to go onto forums and ask around for people who have a lot of experience with custom loop liquid cooling about what they think the reason was for my high temperatures in gaming specifically. It's really weird because when I ran like stress benchmarks, things like IDA 64 Extreme, my temperatures were quite low. They were sitting in like the mid 50s, which is pretty good for 1700X overclocked to 4 gigahertz. But when gaming, it shot up to like mid 60s, which was similar temperatures I was getting from the Hyper 212X that I had kind of cooling the system before. So why was that? It didn't make any sense to me. And kind of after firing off a bunch of questions and getting a lot of very helpful responses, the kind of general consensus was that there was something wrong with the pump. So then when I went into the BIOS to try and kind of up the RPM of the pump to see if that made any difference, I couldn't get it above 2,700 RPM, which is really weird because the D5's max operating RPM is 4,500. So there was obviously something wrong with the pump. And as I showed in my build video, there's this like tiny little dribble of water coming through into the reservoir, and it's supposed to be a powerful raging torrent. So what was up with that? Then I decided there's no other way about it because draining a loop and kind of fiddling with the pump is a lot of effort, especially with a rigid kind of system that I have in my PC. And I only had that much fluid left, and I decided the right thing to do would be to just order a pump because the pump even sounded really unhealthy and I didn't buy it from a reputable source. I bought it from a guy on Yahoo Auctions, so there was a chance that it wasn't going to be working properly. So I went onto EK's website and bought a G2, which is kind of like their upgraded version of the D5 pump. I got it in, I drained my system, and I installed the pump, and lo and behold, it went from a tiny dribble to the raging torrent that I wanted in the beginning. And then I decided this is the perfect opportunity to test what kind of difference flow rate makes in the actual cooling performance. So the test that I did was first at the kind of like operating speed that I would use it day to day, which is about 50% of the actual pump speed, which is ironically enough the 2,700 RPM around there that the previous pump maxed out at. So I was still using it at the same speed, but there was definitely more of a flow rate going on. And yeah, the temperatures were a little bit better. As you can see here from the gameplay footage, it was doing a bit better. And then I decided to kind of up it and push it to 100%, which is 4,000 odd RPM, and the temperatures were looking a little bit better, but it didn't make much of a difference. The thing is, the CPU temperatures are really weird for me because it kind of does this thing where like so let's say we're running at 50 degrees, right, is the kind of average that the pump sits, or that the CPU sits at. It runs at 50 degrees, and then it fires up to like 58, and then kind of slowly goes down to 50 again, and then stabilizes at 50 for a bit, and then fires up to 57 and then goes down. So there's quite a lot of fluctuation, and it's very kind of, it's not random fluctuation, it's very kind of specific time-wise. So I don't know if it has to do with actual strain on the CPU, or if that's just a thing Ryzen CPUs do. Because my GPU, which is the one that uses the most juice while gaming, has a very consistent temperature. But then, when I decided to push it balls to the wall and put all the fans that I have in the PC at 100% power as well, the PC performed a lot better. I was getting like mid 40 degree temperatures across the board on my graphics card and and CPU, so the temperatures between the two components were fairly similar, which was the one thing that worried me with the previous pump, was that the GPU was a lot colder than the CPU, so I thought maybe I seated it wrong or something. But so yeah, the temperatures are a lot more consistent this time, and but at this point the PC is really loud. Like really loud. So I decided that maybe this isn't the best way to run it, even though the temperatures are amazing. Anyway, I now know what the issue was with my PC, and yeah, I think I've kind of fixed it. It's performing a lot better, which means obviously the value proposition is now a little bit better for the liquid cooling system. But the thing is, considering the fact that I have a Ryzen CPU in there, I'm not going to get much more than 4 GHz anyway, because the 4 GHz overclock is stable, but sometimes it acts up a little bit with Premiere Pro when exporting, and I have to dial it back to 3.9, so I'm not going to push it further because it's not stable enough for day-to-day use. And with that, it brings me to the end of this video. Now, with the new pump, I'm actually a lot happier with the PC. I feel that the actual liquid cooling gear is definitely more worth it at this point, especially if you're cranking it, you're getting like at least a 20-degree drop in temperatures, which is quite big. But my biggest issue with this PC at this point actually is the Ryzen CPU in it, because I think if you're traditionally cooling a Ryzen CPU, it's a great value. But the thing is, because of its very limited overclocking headroom, when you kind of move to something a bit more exotic in the cooling department, you're just not getting any more performance, which you would potentially with a CPU like the 8700K. The 8700K, if it's properly cooled, does overclock further than it does on something like an air cooler. So it means that, you know, you're getting a more impressive overclock out of the CPU, although you would probably have to delit it, which is another issue. So the thing is, it'll be interesting to see what this new generation of Ryzen CPUs are going to do for the actual overclockability of the architecture. Hopefully the fact that it's a die shrink will mean that you're going to be getting better overclocking from it. Let's hope that's the case, and because of the kind of socket compatibility, it's going to mean that I can just drop a Ryzen Plus CPU in this PC and then get more bang for my buck, hopefully. Let's see what happens. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. If you liked the video, do like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Otherwise, until next time, bye-bye.